Welcome to our deep dive into the future of climate change.
Yeah.
We're going to be cracking open this hefty report from the U.S. EPA.
Oh, yeah, the one that's got everyone talking.
It has.
Yeah.
It's, the headlines can be a bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to kind of sift through all that and give you the insights you actually need
Right.
from this report.
It's about getting to the signal from the noise.
Exactly.
This report lays out some pretty significant changes
Yeah.
coming down the line if greenhouse gas emissions continue.
Okay, so let's jump right in.
Yeah.
So the EPA report kind of paints this picture of a warmer planet, disrupted rain and snow patterns,
Uh-huh.
and some pretty dramatic changes to our oceans.
Yes. And it's crucial to understand that our choices today
Yeah.
directly impact these changes. It's
Right.
not just some preordained fate.
Right.
We have agency, we have options, and the decisions we make now will shape the future.
So how much warmer are we talking?
Yeah.
I know the report uses different scenarios to project future warming.
And even the most optimistic scenario,
Right.
where we really reduce emissions, we're still on track for at least 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit
Wow.
of warming by 2100.
Okay.
But if we don't take significant action,
Yeah.
we're looking at a potential 8.6 degrees Fahrenheit increase globally.
So think about the hottest summer you've ever experienced,
Yes.
and imagine that becoming the norm.
Exactly. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. That's a pretty sobering thought.
It is.
And it's not just the average temperature increase, right?
Right.
The report also talks about these extreme heat events becoming more frequent and intense.
Absolutely. The report uses this really striking example by the 2040s, those scorching summer days
Yeah.
that were once in the hottest 5% back in the mid-20th century could become commonplace
Oh, wow.
in the U.S.
Okay.
So a dramatic shift.
And impacting all kinds of things, human health to agriculture energy demand.
Absolutely.
I was also struck by the report's projections for rain and snowfall. It seems like things are going to get pretty unpredictable.
It's definitely not a uniform picture. Some regions will experience more rainfall,
Okay.
while others will become drier.
Got it.
But almost everywhere we can expect heavier downpours,
Okay.
increasing the risk of flooding, especially in areas that are already prone to it.
And let's not forget about hurricanes.
Oh,
The report mentions the potential for more intense hurricanes fueled by warmer ocean temperatures.
you're right. That's a major concern. And we're not just talking about more hurricanes, but also the likelihood of more Category 4 and 5 hurricanes.
Right, the most devastating one.
The most devastating ones.
Yeah.
The report highlights a potential increase in the frequency and intensity of these extreme events,
Yeah.
posing a significant threat to coastal communities.
Okay, now for a topic that I always find a bit chilling.
Okay.
Melting ice. The report dedicates entire sections to the shrinking Arctic sea ice,
Yeah.
melting glaciers, and decreasing snow cover.
It's a cascade effect, really.
All right.
As temperatures rise, ice melts at an accelerated rate,
Right.
contributing to rising sea levels, and the visual they use in the report is startling. The Arctic Ocean in September could be practically ice-free by the end of the century.
Wow, that's hard to even picture.
Yeah.
What would an ice-free Arctic even look like?
It would be a world drastically different from what we know today. Everything from wildlife migration patterns to global shipping routes to weather patterns would be impacted. And of course, the melting ice contributes significantly to rising sea levels, which is one of the most widely discussed consequences of climate change.
And the report doesn't sugarcoat the projections for sea level rise, does it?
No, they're pretty straightforward. They're projecting a global sea level rise of 1 to 4 feet by 2100, but with a potential range of up to 6.6 feet.
Wow.
What's really powerful, though, is how they connect those numbers to real-world impacts.
You mean like those examples they give of cities like New York, Galveston, even Nicobay and Washington
Exactly.
potentially facing significant inundation?
Exactly. They're not just talking about abstract figures.
Right.
They're putting those numbers into a context that people can understand and relate to.
Yeah.
It hits home when you visualize places you've been,
Right.
or cities, being submerged by rising waters.
Yeah, one thing that I hadn't given much thought to before reading this report
Okay.
is ocean acidification. I have to admit, it kind of caught me off guard.
It's definitely one of the less talked about consequences of climate change, but it's equally critical as the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It becomes more acidic. And that's bad news for marine life, especially creatures like shellfish and corals that rely on calcium carbonate to build their shells and skeletons.
Yeah, the report mentions that coral growth could slow by almost 50% by 2050.
Oh,
It's a pretty alarming statistic, especially when you consider the vital role that coral reefs play in marine ecosystems.
It's a domino effect, really. The decline of coral reefs would have a ripple effect throughout the entire ocean ecosystem, impacting biodiversity, fisheries, and coastal protection. They're often called the rainforests of the sea for a reason.
So it's not just about a warmer planet.
Right.
It's about all these interconnected systems
Yes.
being disrupted in really profound ways, with consequences that extend far beyond just environmental impacts.
Precisely. We're talking about food security, water resources, global migration patterns, economic stability, climate changes interwoven with every aspect of human society, and the choices we make today will determine the severity of these impacts.
Well, that's a lot to process, but before we delve into any potential solutions, I think we need to take a moment just to let all of this sink in.
Absolutely. Let's take a breath and then we'll dive into the next part of our conversation where we'll explore what we can actually do to address these challenges.
Sounds good.
It's not all doom and gloom, I promise.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was getting a little worried there for a second.
I know.
Yeah,
It can be heavy,
it can.
but there is hope.
Okay, good. I like hope.
Me too.
All right, we covered some pretty heavy ground so far.
Yeah, we did.
But the EPA report doesn't just lay out the problems.
No.
It also digs into potential solutions, right?
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
that's where things start to get a bit more hopeful, you know?
Okay, good.
We're not powerless in this situation. We have the knowledge.
Right.
We have the tools.
Yeah.
We have the capacity to make a real difference.
So let's talk about those tools.
Yeah. What?
The report mentions things like reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that actually look like in practice?
Right.
Where do we even begin?
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach for sure,
Uh,
but one of the most crucial areas is transitioning away from fossil fuels and embracing renewable energy sources.
okay, so like,
Think solar, wind, geothermal,
oh,
harnessing the power of nature instead of burning coal and oil.
I get the concept, but honestly, sometimes it feels like all we hear is solar and wind are good.
Right.
Can we go a little deep? Like, what are the specific technologies involved?
Yeah,
And what are some of the challenges in making that switch on a large scale?
you're right. It's important to get beyond the slogans. When we talk about solar, we're talking about everything from rooftop panels on homes and businesses to massive solar farms covering acres of land. And the technology is constantly evolving. We're seeing incredible advancements in efficiency and affordability.
Okay, and what about wind power? I know there are those giant wind turbines
Yeah.
you see dotting the landscape,
Mm-hmm.
but are there other types of wind energy?
Yes. There's also offshore wind, which has huge potential.
Okay,
Imagine vast wind farms harnessing the power of ocean winds. And one of the big challenges with renewables is their intermittent nature.
right.
The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow.
Yeah, that's true.
That's where energy storage comes in.
Okay.
We're seeing exciting developments in battery technology that can store energy generated from renewables and make it available when needed.
So it's not just about generating clean energy, it's about storing it effectively too.
Exactly.
What about sectors beyond energy? What about something like transportation,
Yeah.
which is a major contributor to emissions?
Transportation is a great example of where technology and behavioral changes, right, need to work hand in hand.
Okay.
Electric vehicles are becoming increasingly mainstream,
Yeah.
and we're seeing a rapid expansion of charging infrastructure.
Yeah, man.
As battery technology continues to improve range, anxiety will become less of a concern, and electric cars will become even more appealing.
I have to admit I'm seeing more and more electric cars on the roads these days.
You are, me too.
But what about things like planes and ships?
Yeah.
Those seem a lot trickier to electrify.
You're not wrong. Those are definitely tougher nuts to crack.
Cool.
But research is ongoing to develop sustainable fuels for aviation and shipping biofuels, hydrogen fuel cells. These are areas where we're seeing promising developments. And remember, it's not just about the vehicles themselves,
Like,
it's about how we use them.
okay.
Investing in efficient and affordable public transportation systems, creating more walkable cities, encouraging cycling, these are all crucial pieces of the puzzle.
So it's about a combination of technological innovation, smart infrastructure, and changes in individual behavior.
Yes.
What about other areas where we can make a difference? Agriculture, for example, comes to mind.
Agriculture is a fascinating one because it's both a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions and a potential source of solutions.
Okay.
Practices like regenerative agriculture, which focuses on building healthy soil and sequestering carbon, are gaining a lot of traction.
I've heard the term regenerative agriculture thrown around, but I'll admit I'm a bit fuzzy on the specifics. Can you paint a picture of what this actually looks like in practice?
Imagine vibrant fields teeming with life, not just rows of monoculture crops.
Okay.
Regenerative agriculture is about minimizing tillage, using cover crops to protect and nourish the soil, and integrating livestock grazing in a way that mimics natural ecosystems. It's about working with nature, not against it, to create a more resilient and productive agricultural system.
That's a much clearer image than just the phrase building healthy soil.
Yeah.
And speaking of working with nature, what about deforestation? That's a major contributor to climate change, right?
Absolutely. Trees are incredible carbon sinks absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So, deforestation not only releases carbon that's been stored in trees, it also reduces the planet's ability to absorb future
It's like
emissions.
a double whammy.
It is a double whammy.
So what are some effective ways to address deforestation? It seems like a complex issue with a lot of different drivers.
It is complex, but there are solutions we need to protect existing forests through measures like sustainable forestry practices and responsible land use planning. We also need to address the underlying causes of deforestation, like agricultural expansion driven by demand for certain commodities, and we need to recognize the rights of indigenous communities who are often the best stewards of their forests.
It sounds like there's a lot we can do,
There is.
but it requires a concerted effort
Yeah.
across different sectors and at various levels. So let's talk about the role of individuals.
Okay.
Can our individual actions really make a difference in the face of such a global challenge?
This is a question I get asked a lot, and my answer is always a resounding yes.
Okay, good.
While we absolutely need systemic change, individual actions are essential too. They create a ripple effect influencing others and sending signals to businesses and policymakers.
So what are some concrete actions listeners can take in their own lives?
Think about reducing your energy consumption at home. Simple things like switching to LED light bulbs, using energy-efficient appliances, and being mindful of your thermostat settings can make a difference. Choosing sustainable products, supporting businesses that prioritize environmental responsibility, reducing meat consumption. These are all meaningful actions, and don't underestimate the power of your voice. Talk to your friends and family about climate change. Contact your elected officials, get involved in local initiatives.
So it's about making those conscious choices in our daily life and using our voices to advocate for change at a larger scale.
Exactly.
But it's not about being perfect, is it?
No, not at all.
It's about progress, about making those small steps
It is.
and moving in the right direction.
You've hit the nail on the head. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly.
Bro.
Every step we take, no matter how small, contributes to a more sustainable future.
That's a really empowering message. It can be easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the climate crisis, but it's important to remember that we have agency and our actions matter.
Absolutely. And as the EPA report emphasizes, the sooner we act, the more options we have, and the more effectively we can mitigate the worst consequences. It's not about waiting for someone else to solve the problem. It's about each of us taking responsibility and being part of the solution.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground, from the sobering projections to the inspiring solutions. Let's take a moment to let all of this settle in before we wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts and resources for our listeners. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the future of climate change. We've dug into the science, the projections, and even explored some potential solutions. It's a lot to absorb, but I'm curious what's resonating with you most as we reach the end of this journey.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom, but what strikes me is that this report doesn't just lay out the problems, it offers a roadmap, a sense of possibility. It emphasizes that we have the power to choose a different path.
I'm with you on that. It's a call to action, not a prophecy of inevitable doom. We've talked about the potential consequences of inaction, but we've also uncovered some incredible opportunities.
Right.
From the transition to renewable energy, to transforming our transportation systems, to revolutionizing agriculture and protecting our forests. There's so much we can do.
And what's exciting is that many of these solutions offer a win-win scenario. They don't just benefit the environment, they also create economic opportunities, enhance public health, and strengthen communities. Imagine cities with cleaner air and reduced traffic congestion, thriving rural communities built around sustainable agriculture, a world powered by clean, renewable energy.
So if you could distill everything we've discussed into one key message for our listener, what would it be?
It would be this: you have power. Each and every one of us has the ability to make choices that contribute to a more sustainable future. It's not about waiting for someone else to fix it. It's about recognizing that we are all part of the solution.
That's a powerful reminder. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of this challenge, but ultimately it comes down to the choices we make each and every day, whether it's reducing our own carbon footprint, supporting businesses that align with their values, or advocating for policy changes. Our actions matter.
Exactly. And as we've discussed, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress. It's about making those small steps, making those conscious choices, adding our voices to the chorus calling for change.
So for our listener who's feeling inspired and ready to take action, what are some resources or next steps you would recommend?
There are so many incredible organizations out there doing amazing work. The EPA website itself is a great starting point for information and resources. And then you have groups like the Sierra Club 350.org, the Climate Reality Project, the Union of Concerned Scientists, all doing vital work on climate change advocacy, education, and solutions.
And what about on a more local level? Are there things listeners can do within their own communities to make a difference?
Absolutely. Connect with local environmental groups. Find out what initiatives are happening in your area, attend city council meetings, get involved in community gardens or tree planting projects. It's amazing how much impact you can have when you connect with like-minded people in your own community.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the future of climate change, let's leave our listener with one final thought to ponder. We've explored the science, the projections, the solutions, the importance of individual action, but ultimately it comes down to this: what kind of future do we want to create?
What a profound question. I think that's something each of us needs to grapple with, to envision, and to work towards. Because the future is not something that just happens to us. It's something we actively create. And with knowledge, courage, and collective action, we can create a future where both humanity and the planet thrive.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, empowering, and maybe even a little bit hopeful. Remember, the future is in our hands. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better world.